Hello and welcome back. Now we have this enemy and we're ready to start implementing some behavior for the enemy. Now we'd like to start with being able to shoot the enemy and having some sort of impact effect. So that's going to involve impact sounds, it's going to involve impact particles. So we can go ahead and get started with the impact effect for the enemy. So we're back here in the enemy class, and the first thing I'm going to do is go to enemy.cpp and go into begin play, because we want to enable the mesh to be able to be hit by our line trace for our weapon fire. So we can do that by getting the mesh by using get mesh, and we can set the collision response for this mesh. So we're going to use set collision response to channel. Now this function takes an e-collision channel, so we're going to say e-collision channel, and we're going to use visibility since that's the channel we're using with our line trace. Now we're going to set this response, the next parameter is an e-collision response. So e-collision response, and the response is going to be to block. So now we can hit that mesh with our line trace. Now, in order to have a particle system and a sound, we're going to need to add those variables to the enemy class. So here in the protected section, let's go ahead and add a particle system. So I'm going to say class uParticle system, and this is going to be a uParticle system pointer. We're going to call this impact particles. Now I'm going to go ahead and give this a U property, and we're going to make this edit anywhere, blueprint read write, and I'll give this the category of combat. And we need to have our meta equals allow private access equals true. Now we're going to want a sound as well, so we're going to say u sound q. This will be a forward declared variable, and we're going to call this impact sound, and I'll give this the same u property as impact particles. Now I'm going to comment impact particles, and I'm going to say particles to spawn when hit by bullets. And for impact sound, I'm going to say sound to play when hit by bullets. Now we can go ahead and compile this. Now the easiest thing to do would be to access these variables from the shooter character class whenever we do our line trace when firing the weapon. And once we access these variables, we could spawn the particles and play the sound. But we might have other different types of classes that we can shoot, and we may want each class to behave differently when we hit it. For that reason, I'd like to make an interface. Now, an interface is a class that has function declarations but does not define the behavior of those functions. It's a class designed to be inherited from, and any class that inherits from that interface can implement its own functionality. So we're going to make an interface and inherit from that interface with our enemy class. So let's go to our C++ classes/shooter folder and make an interface. We're going to right click, new C++ class, and scroll down and select Unreal Interface. Go ahead and hit next, and this will be an interface for getting hit by bullets. So I'm going to call this bullet hit interface. Go ahead and click create class. In C++, you can have a specific kind of class called an interface. Now an interface contains functions with the very strange feature that you don't actually provide function bodies for functions on the interface. That's because interface functions are designed to be overridden in child classes. Here's how it works. Let's say I have an interface and I declare a function called bullet hit. Now on the interface class, I don't actually provide the function body. I only declare the function name. Now, I may have an enemy class that will implement this interface. So the enemy will actually inherit the bullet hit function and provide its own definition for that function. This is useful because we can have other classes. Say I have an explosive class, and the explosive class can also implement that same interface and inherit the bullet hit function. Only explosive will have its own override of bullet hit, providing its own functionality. This works because in C++ you can have multiple inheritance. Let's say I have an enemy class inherited from the A character class. Now we can inherit from character and the interface as well. C++ allows multiple inheritance, which means the enemy will be an A character as well as a bullet interface class. Now the enemy class will inherit all functions from the character class as well as all functions from the interface class. And it's up to the enemy class to implement the functionality for the bullet hit function. Likewise, we can have an explosive class that derives from a completely different parent, such as actor. Now, thanks to multiple inheritance, explosive can inherit from actor and bullet interface and inherit the bullet hit function. And the explosive class can provide a completely different override for the bullet hit function. So we now have a bullet hit interface class. And in the bullet hit interface header file, you'll notice that there are two different class definitions. There's a U-bullet hit interface and an I-bullet hit interface. We're going to add our function declarations in I-bullet hit interface. And Unreal Engine is helping us out with a comment here that says add interface functions to this class. This is the class that will be inherited to implement this interface. So here in the public section, we're going to add a new function. Let's make this a void function and call it bullet hit. Now we're going to inherit from the I interface in the enemy class so we can override this bullet hit function. And because this is a bullet hit function, we're going to pass in an F hit result. Let's call this hit result. Now I'm going to make this a U function, and I'm going to give it the keywords blueprint native event and blueprint callable. Now a blueprint native event can have some C++ code and some implementation in blueprints. Now we're not going to create a function body here on bullet hit interface. Remember, this is where we just declare the function. We need to actually implement this on the enemy class. So let's go into enemy.h and scroll up to our class declaration here. And this is where we declare our multiple inheritance. We're inheriting from a character, but we're also now going to inherit from I-bullet interface. And in order to have I-bullet interface recognized by the compiler, we need to include bullet interface.h. So we're going to add that line just above the .generated.h line. So we'll say include bullet interface.h. Now we need to override the bullet hit function. So let's go down into the public section. Down here at the bottom, and let's override bullet hit. Now because bullet hit is blueprint native event, when we override this, we need to add an underscore implementation to the function name. Now I talk a little bit more about blueprint native event in my previous Unreal Engine C++ course, so we won't go into too much detail. Just know that we need the underscore implementation for this function override. So let's go into enemy.h in the public section, and we're going to say virtual void bullet hit underscore implementation. Now this is going to take an F hit result called hit result. And this is an override, so we're going to add the override keyword. Now we're not going to add a U function macro. Since we're overriding this function, the function already gets the U function properties from the parent version of bullet hit. Now we need to add a function body. So let's add one to enemy.cpp down here at the bottom. we're going to fully qualify the function name with aEnemy and add a function body. So we now have a function that we're inheriting from the bullet hit interface on the enemy class, and we're ready to implement this. In the next video, we're going to add some functionality to this function and call this when hitting the enemy with our line trace in our fire weapon function on shooter character. Now, I was unable to compile this code because when I included the interface header, I typed bullet interface, but it's actually bullet hit interface. So I need to correct that typo as well as the iBullet hit interface class here as well. So you probably caught that when I typed it. Now that I've fixed that typo, I'm going to compile this again. Okay, so we're all compiled and ready to continue this in the next video. I'll see you then.